Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kaylee Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur Podcast. And I'm joined today by the fabulous Fliss Wallace, who is an independent financial advisor, financial coach, and a SSAS practitioner. And in this episode, we are going to be diving into smart money moves for female founders, building wealth, security, and financial freedom. Fliss, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. I've been hearing about your podcast I've been listening for quite a while, so I'm really glad to be a guest. Really
Oh,
great.
amazing. I love to hear that. A regular listener as well, which is fantastic. But let's dive in. Let's start with sharing with our audience before we dive into all of the incredible information and I'm sure tips that you're going to give everyone today. Do you want to share with our listeners a little bit about you and your journey and story?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an independent financial advisor. I didn't start that way. I started doing biological sciences at university,
Oh, wow.
which was a completely random start in terms of ending up in finance. My first job straight out of uni was nothing to do with science either. I actually went into events and hospitality, working for a Premiership rugby team. And after that, I found my way through to finance via property structuring. So I started to work at a property tax practice where we set up a consultancy, and for a good couple of years, 3 years, we were very much specialists in high net worth individuals buying property in London and wanting to structure them in a certain way. And then Brexit hit. So literally the day after Brexit, the phone stopped ringing. No one knew what was going to happen. No one knew what the new laws and rules were going to be. So no one suddenly wanted to buy property in London. So just like that, our business was over. And luckily, I'm always looking for a plan B, always looking for diversification of income. So luckily, I'd already started to retrain as a financial advisor at that point. So it wasn't that much longer that we were able to get qualified. And in 2019, we, myself and my business partner, set up our own practice. So we are a female-led independent financial advisory practice. A couple of years later, I then also added financial coaching as a specialism to our abilities to help clients. And then in 2023, we also set up a SSAS practice, which are small self-administered schemes for property owners to have multi-member pensions that they can use to support their business, buy their own premises, and have lots of other features as well. So it was quite a drawn out process to end up in finance, but it helped me hugely with different areas in terms of service and expectations and hospitality. I think it's such a huge area where, everything is about getting good value for clients and making sure they get good delivery and we meet their expectations.
Absolutely. And what an incredible journey as well, from where you sort of started at the beginning and sort of moving all the way through. And, I love the fact that you're specializing in and supporting people and really helping them in terms of their business, their finances, long-term wealth building. We're going to dive into loads of different things today anyway, but I think it's incredible what you've built. And I know that you're supporting so many people out there. So I want to talk about the mindset first of all, because I feel like this is something that as entrepreneurs, and a lot of my listeners are female entrepreneurs, mindset is one of those big things. And I think when it comes to finances and money in general, we quite often put blockers on ourselves. So what mindset shifts, before we dive into the really, really juicy stuff, but what mindset shifts around money do you believe that entrepreneurs or female founders need to make early on in their business journey to make sure that they're setting themselves up for success?
Yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of my work is involved in female entrepreneurs. It's an area I absolutely love working with. and an area that I think I can add the most value to as well for lots of reasons, which I'm sure we'll talk about in due course. But
Mm.
I generally tend to see two different types of female business owner.
Mhm.
You have one where they are incredibly good at making money, but they're still holding that masculine energy of, I must do everything myself. I can't outsource this. I can't relinquish control. And a lot of that from a money concept comes from a position of trauma. If they've had negative money experiences in their, early childhood, for example, or they've seen debt, they've been in debt cycles before, and it's shaking that off now that they are the master of their own destiny. So what we see a lot with that, and also sometimes with imposter syndrome, is they make money, but they immediately push it away. So they overgive, they overshare, or they place it in areas in their life that actually doesn't fulfill their needs when they're actually truly sat down and think about what they wanted to get out of their business. And then the other side that I see, which is more often than not the clients that I tend to work with, are those that, again, sometimes from a position of money trauma, but also because they don't necessarily have a peer support network around them of people that are in the same situation, are so terrified of what to do next because they think it's going to be taken away, or they think that they don't deserve it, they haven't worked hard enough for it, that they just do nothing with it. And the number of business owners, female business owners I come across where you talk to them and they've got 6 figures of cash in their business account because they don't need to take it all out of their business, but they don't know what to do next with it. And it's that kind of block of, okay, I've made the money, but it's the what next? What shall I do with it next? And it often dealing with that mindset of, I must get specialist advice, coaching, assistance with this, or what is possible for me past my business, is a real ostrich syndrome situation for them. And it's just coaxing them, daring them to dream what happens after your business, or why have we set this up? What else can we deploy it for your future? So they tend to be the two different mindset shifts, is either you deserve this, stop pushing it away, let's deploy this properly, or actually you need to move this onto your next step. What next? What next? Dare to dream. Because ultimately, if you're leaving cash in your business or even in your personal account and it's not being deployed for investment, it is going backwards with the rate of inflation. So even if you're getting 1% in a bank account, inflation was 3.6 last month. So it's going backwards. So you have to be on that train with the help of advisors if you don't want to do it yourself. But you have to be looking at always what next.
Do you know what? And I think this is a really, really interesting thing to identify, and actually something that, again, I will openly and personally share on the podcast here live. Is I remember reaching out to you many, many months ago, Fliss, and I was definitely that person in camp too, where you're sitting on money in the business, and I do reinvest. I do a lot of investment in terms of the business itself and my personal development. Obviously, pay myself a salary, but then what do you do with the rest of it? And I think it's about having a plan and actually the support from someone like yourself who knows what they're doing to make sure that you're maximizing the best opportunity of that money. Otherwise, like you said, it's sitting there not doing anything. And that was a big thing that I had. And and I think it's really important as business owners that we are, we're open, we're transparent with ourselves, and then we seek help from people like yourself who can support us and direct us in the right direction. So let's dive into this a bit more, because I'm sure there'll be many people kind of listening and thinking, oh gosh, yeah, that might be me at the moment. I've got X amount, what do I do with it? I can't just pay myself the salary, we're going to get tax loads, etc. And I know this is a big topic. But what would you say then? Let's start with kind of like the financial foundations, as I'd potentially call them. What is the first thing that people should look at doing when they start to make money in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing we always talk about buckets when I'm coaching clients, or we're talking about financial advice with clients. So you want to look at your yesterday bucket. So that is what loans or debts or mortgages you've got either in your business or your personal account, and you want to make sure that they are serviceable, but also that you're stress testing them, because we've seen it happen and it's going to happen again in not too distant future. There are going to be stress tests on debt levels, interest rates or mortgages, etc. And we want to make sure that even in a worst case scenario, you've got that kind of ability to service that. Then you're going to look at your today bucket. So being super focused around what is your essential income needs, and then what is discretionary that you may or may not be willing to give up at different times under those kind of stress tests. And you always say in your today bucket, we also want to keep 3 to 6 months of your typical outgoings as a fighting fund, as an emergency cash fund. So understanding what your essential needs are, heating, eating, etc., is really important to get that figure right. Because again, we don't want to be holding too much cash, but we want to know that 90% of worst case scenarios could be fixed from using that emergency cash. Because the last thing you want to do in a difficult environment, whether that's business is tight or debts are going up, is taking on more debt to service something you didn't expect. And then I think one of the ones that we business owners are really guilty of forgetting is their tomorrow bucket. So I know we're always looking at the month ahead, the year ahead, the target ahead, but we can't do this forever. You know, no business really can do this forever unless you're going to sell it or retain it as a passive income and make yourself redundant from that business. So what would happen to that business without you is one thing. You know, can it be serviced without you? Does it have a value that could be sold? But also from a financial advisory perspective, my job is to create you a plan B if you couldn't do anything with that business, if you had to sell it for £1 because no one wanted to buy it, you know, if no one could give you the income from it by you stepping away and you just went, I'm done with this. So using your income and expenditure understanding of what you're bringing in today and what is surplus income to deploy to your future is giving you choice later on in life. And the most obvious one is clearly pension contributions. Pension contributions from your limited company, for example, as an employer, come straight off your corporation tax bill. And what's really, really vital for business owners to understand is that you're not limited by personal earnings on your employer contributions. So for example, most business owners will be taking 12 grand salary and let's say 30, 40, 50 grand dividend. If you were only able to make pension contributions from your personal income, the most you can put into your pension that year is 12 grand because that's your salary. Dividends don't count towards that, nor do rental income. But you can make an employer contribution of £60,000 this year, even if you only took 12,000. So if you are running a huge profit and you're an accountant who hopefully is an accountant stroke tax advisor instead of a bookkeeper stroke accountant, so they're proactive, they should be telling you ahead of the end of your tax year, you're tracking a really big profit. We need to think about what to do with that profit. And the most obvious one is to look at is pension contributions. They come straight off your bottom line. They come straight off your corporation tax. But then there are other things then to think about with your future. What else do you want from your life? What is this business creating? Is it so that you can build a property portfolio? So how do we get on with that? Is it so that you can develop a product that is slightly different to what you're doing in your day-to-day? Does that happen inside your business, or do we set up a new business and lend money over to it? All of these things are on the table, but you've got to give yourself the time to take a step back and actually look at the bigger picture, because we all know the hamster wheel is very, very enticing and overwhelming, and we're just like going from month to month as business owners.
Yeah, what great advice. Great advice. And I love the concept of, again, looking at it in terms of buckets. And, you know, and again, taking a step back and looking at that bigger picture and really kind of, you know, I think as well, understanding the numbers yourself, right? And, you know, projections and things like this, because I think, again, as business owners, it's so easy to, like you said, be on the hamster wheel, that day-to-day cycle of what you're doing, what you're delivering, all of the things that actually are people aware of their finances and, you know, and their cash flow, for example. I think cash flow is massive as well. I mean, is there any advice for you as well with, you know, people who might potentially be struggling one month with cash flow, for example? It might be, you know, bounce payments from clients, or it might be that they're just not signing as many clients, whatever the situation is. What is there anything that they could do, or that you would suggest or recommend, to kind of make sure that they're fully on top of cash flow and managing, ready for if there is a bad month or a low month or a dip?
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly groundbreaking advice, but going back to that 3 to 6 months, like early doors in your business, it's really tempting when you start to bring in money for the first time to start taking it all out and enjoying it straight away. Actually, that's when is the most vulnerable time for your business, because if you don't know the tax implications of doing that, and actually because you're early on in your business, you don't know how your business is going to pan out. It might have lumpy income and expenditure, as you've said. Is for that first year, you kind of got to dampen your excitement about it, about your success, and be like, right, we just need to see how this year pans out. If you can get your 3 to 6 months fighting funds, your emergency pot, and then the other thing as well is, with the beauty of digital technology and things, there are great cash flow software as part of your Sage or your other accounting software that can give you the indication of anticipated outgoings, VAT, etc. So having a regular money date with yourself, whether that's quarterly or monthly, dependent on how lumpy your business is, again, the same process applies. Be really clear what your monthly outgoings are within your business and what your expected income is over a trajectory, to work out where you're going to have those lumps. And you can only service that yourself if you've got that savings pot to hand. So it's unfortunately not very exciting an answer to say, keep your powder dry for the first couple of years until you really know how predictable your business is.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, from my own experience, just for our listeners listening to this as well. So I'm always very open with all the different things I do in my business. So with my own business account, I use Starling. And I have, I think it's five spaces inside my Starling account. I've got obviously the accounts and then spaces, and I've got a VAT one for VAT, because that's the one I dislike the most. Yep. VAT, corporation tax, I've got one for that. I've then got reinvestments one. I've then got a profit one. And, and they sort of, again, help me to manage. So when that money comes into the business account, every day, but every few days I'm starting to move money around into those different spaces and areas. Otherwise, again, it's so easy to say, oh wow, look at all of that, that's crazy and amazing, but then your VAT bill comes every 3 months and you need to be ready to hand over whatever it is that you need to pay. And I think that is something that, again, is great valued advice. Again, it goes back to your kind of the pots side of things, but again, just making sure that you're really planned strategically and on top of this, because it's so easy, isn't it, to potentially miss it, or if that that VAT bill comes in, or if many of our listeners potentially might not be VAT registered yet, but even with corporation tax that comes up every year, you've got to be prepared to be able to pay it.
100%. It's a lot easier from a mindset perspective, from an overspending perspective. If you're the kind of person that's a bit spendy, gets a bit excited, if you've got a pot that is named something else, it's very obvious to your brain that it's not for you. So if it's identified as HMRC or VAT or corporation tax, if you're getting into a regular habit of each month going, okay, that's how much I've made, that much has gone out, that's my lifetime corporation tax liability, and you put that in your account every month. I know we all like to pay ourselves first, the mentality of pay yourself first, but actually the tax man does need to be paid first. You do not want to be on the wrong side of the
No,
so getting that sorted, and then knowing, in lifetime you are always on top of your tax position. One of the mistakes I see quite a lot from from successful as growing businesses is the same situation but on the personal side, and in respect of dividends. So I cannot tell you how many times I've come across clients who have not really had the penny drop on the aspect of taxation of your salary, your PAYE being taxed at source, but your dividends being gross, for which you've got to save tax in lifetime. And I've seen 6-figure doom loops where the self-assessment has come in January, and because they've spent it and not saved their tax from the dividends they took to live or go on holiday or enjoy themselves or whatever, is they've then had to take a dividend out in this tax year, which is then taxed next year, to pay last year's tax bill. And if you are not growing at the trajectory that can support that, you are in a doom loop. And I've seen that happen with 6-figure liabilities, where people very quickly have said, I'm going to have to go on a payment plan with HMRC because I owe them like 200 grand, because I didn't realize that dividends were taxed that I had to save the tax because they come out gross. Now, whose fault is that? I do get a lot of clients saying, my accountant should have told me that. Maybe they should have done, but it is your responsibility to have the right tools and the right people around you to support you with that. And you're not on your own in trying to work this out. There are good bookkeepers, accountants, there's good software, and there's good advisors that can give you a steer in how much on average you should be saving each month to make sure you're on top of it.
Absolutely. So that's the key thing, keeping on top of tax. We don't want to find any of our listeners being in that situation. That would absolutely petrify me. Anyway, well, let's talk about something really, really exciting, because I know that you support so many people in wealth building and, safety and security and financial gain. So tell us a little bit more about this. How do you support your clients? And I know obviously everyone is individual and different, but how do you support your clients overall with sort of building wealth and sort of financial safety and security for the future?
Yes, so we have two areas to our line of work. So on the advisory side, which is perhaps better known, the way that we support clients is we usually undertake, if they come on as a new client, a full financial plan, which is a root and branch assessment of their financial circumstances, but also identifying their financial vulnerabilities. So a financial plan is obviously bespoke to a client situation, but it may include pulling together old workplace pensions into one place. It may include setting up a pension for the very first time and making contributions which enhance their tax position from a corporation tax perspective. We look at tax efficient investments. If clients are earning over £100,000, for example, they want to reduce their tax. And the reason you might want to do that is obviously not losing tax-free childcare, tax credits, or being in the 60% tax trap where you're effectively taxed 60% between 100 and 125,000. So looking at tax efficient investments to enhance them with that. But we do that not just as a business or a personal, but we can do it as a whole family. So we also support clients that have aspirations to fund for school fees in the future, and creating a pot that can be used for that in the future. We look at children's investments, so junior ISAs and junior pensions. One of the best gifts you can give your children if you have the surplus income to support it is to set them up with those from birth, because the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. And if they've got 18 years on you, then when most people think about it, think of how much that growth on growth on growth and growth is happening in the background before they're even able as adults to make their own financial decisions. It could be the best gift you could give them, is to be able to go to university without having to start their career in debt, for example. So we look at that financial plan. We also extrapolate that. So one of the biggest things that financial advisors have now is cash flow planning software. So we can put things in, project it in time forward, discount it by the rate of inflation, and tell you if you're on track to meet your goals. And that is the single most important piece of information we can tell you, because there's no point coming to me at 59 and saying I haven't got a pension but I want to retire at 60. But if you're telling us this is my plan, is this achievable, or how do I need to pivot now so I can make informed decisions now to get there and close that gap, then that is the best way that we can assist clients, is giving them the information, giving them the choice to make change or not, or to change their goals, or to delay their retirement or bring it forward because they're going to sell their business and we now know what that business exit strategy is going to look like. That is the best way that we can assist clients on the advisory side. On the financial coaching side, that is slightly different. So that is more about meeting and getting curious and exploring any money blocks that they've come to us with in the first place. It's all very well having money to deploy, but being comfortable doing that and understanding why you need to do that, and it being aligned with what's important to you, is actually to some extent more important than the investment advice. It's freeing yourself and giving yourself permission to dare to take the next step from the cash that you may have built up yourself, you may have received in a divorce, or you may have inherited. And so that looks at your money habits and your habitudes. Do I overspend? Are there certain times of year, certain times of the month that I overspend? Am I an emotional spender? Do I overgive? Are there areas that I could get more curious about that would help me with the stress that I feel about with planning or finances? So getting more understanding of your numbers, your expenditure, getting more education and confidence with it. That's kind of what financial coaching can help you with, is to explore and tease out what is holding you back. Why are we willing to give that feeling up? What can we create for ourselves instead as a new mindset shift so that we can take the next step forward? So they're very different, but as you can probably tell, they overlap massively.
Yeah. And I think, sort of mentioning what you just said there in regards to confidence, I think that's huge. Again, as entrepreneurs, I think we're always confident in our own area of expertise, aren't we? Whatever that may be, whether, we will have listeners listening to this that are coaches, that are service providers, that are website designers, that are florists, that are hair and beauty and aesthetics practitioners, whatever the business is, they're confident in their trade as such. But when it comes to other areas of business, and I think finance is a big one. I don't think it's easy to feel confident in finance unless you have a coach or someone, an advisor or someone that can really support you with it. Because, I mean, again, from my own experience, when I first started out, I was working full time as an assistant head teacher anyway. I hadn't got a clue what I was meant to do. I was getting a salary from that job, so I basically didn't pay myself anything from my business. And again, I was in that situation of just having loads of money in the business, not doing anything with it. And I was clueless. I was absolutely lost with what to do, because I didn't have any knowledge and understanding about running the finances of a business as such. So I think that's massive, isn't it? It's again having that confidence and that knowledge and understanding, or at least being able to have someone on the other end of whether it's a Zoom call or a WhatsApp message, whatever it is, to really support you with that.
And I really do, get angry with our own industry for this. We don't, as an industry, make it easy for women to enter financial advice. There's only 16% of advisors that are practicing advisors are women, and even few of them are running their own business. So they're either tied agents,
Nice.
which means they only promote products within their group, their network. So examples like St James's Place, for example, they're not independent; they're a tied agent, or they're just employed by a bigger firm. They're not running their own business. They don't have the same pressures or understanding of you running a business because they don't do it. They just get a wage. So we do make it difficult, and also the jargon of it is really difficult to navigate if you haven't got someone who can speak to you in plain English. And the fear of asking questions is the area that I really get angry that women are made to feel stupid asking questions. What's an ISA? So how does my pension work? You should never feel like that, but there aren't enough female advisors that maybe women prefer to speak to have that confidence to say, I need help in this area. How can you support me? It has got a reputation for being male, pale, stale, our industry, and I have to say most of the time that is the case.
Yeah, I absolutely. Again, I'm just sort of having flashbacks to when I first started, and I had exactly that. I was so fearful for asking questions because I was worried about sounding stupid. To my accountant at the time. But that's so true, and this actually ties into something I really wanted to ask you that. Obviously for anyone in business, but those that are then sort of scaling. So say, for example, they're scaling to multiple 6 and 7 figures, you're starting to become bigger and bigger. Are there any, other than the ones you've just mentioned there in terms of fears or even misconceptions that you see quite commonly when people start scaling?
Yes, I think definitely some of the feedback I get from clients that have started to get wealthy very quickly and are scaling up is the feeling of isolation and
Yeah.
not knowing who they can trust to support them on that journey. So we often get when we speak, obviously I speak in many masterminds, and a lot of the clients say I'm really struggling to sort of interact with my friendship group because they don't understand, they don't run a business, and they feel that if they are too open about their wealth or their growth or their ambitions, that they may be sort of battered down, socially speaking, and is that, they haven't got their peer network around them that are on the same journey as them. Now, yes, that can happen. I mean, the simple answer is change your friends, but in reality, you don't want to do that. It's about finding the right support network, which may be a mastermind, which may be a Facebook group, which may be, online kind of tribe, for want of a better word, that makes you feel that you're on the journey with other people. So assuming that you have to do it yourself and assuming you have to be quiet about it is probably a misconception. You've got to be in the right room, to feel that you can take the next step. The other thing I get a lot with female business owners is, well, if my business is doing well, my personal life is going to be affected. And
Yeah.
sometimes that happens, in some of the groups that I work with, the divorce rate is quite high. So
Yes.
they suddenly realize they're capable of more, and they've realized that there are certain people in their lives that are holding them back, and they have enough. But majority of people, that's not the case. It's about communicating that you are on this journey. And we say that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it does. It takes a family to raise a company, because there will be times when you have to give your company all, and the family life maybe has to be taken up by somebody else and they have to pull their weight a little bit. And then it'll be yin and yang, particularly if you've got two business owners in the family. That can be a real tussle for power and time and everything else that goes with it. So it's about, you can't be on the journey on your own and expect everyone to be on the same path as you. You've got to communicate what you're trying to achieve, and hopefully that they get on board with you as well with it. And the other thing as well is the mum guilt of, if you are focused on your business while you're scaling up and it is going to take a lot of your time in the interim, is that your children are suddenly going to miss out on having a parent around, or that they're mentally affected. I don't agree with that. I think there is no better example for your children than showing that you are working hard to build something and you're focused and that you're going to be successful. And I now have, my boys are nearly 5 and 2.5. They're too young to really understand that I work, from home a lot, but I also drive to see clients, etc. But I have clients and friends who have older children who now actually their culture of wanting to make their own money, whether it's building something on Amazon or building a digital product because that's what mummy's shown them how to do, etc. Their culture that they have just absorbed like a sponge in the early years is such a great start in life. And I don't think that that's a downside.
No, I absolutely agree. Actually, my daughter often says to me now, she wants to be a content creator or YouTuber when she's older, and because she wants to run her own business and make her own money.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the fact that I've inspired her to start her own business. I mean, she's only 10, so who knows? We will see. But no, you're absolutely right. And yeah, some really, really interesting points there. I want to talk a little bit about mistakes before we sort of go on to finishing off with looking beyond all of this and sort of really building legacies and wealth building and all the things. But I think with mistakes, there's probably some real common mistakes that potentially you come across with women building businesses when it comes to the finances side of things. What would you say they are, and are there any way that they can try to avoid these?
I think the ostrich syndrome of not really nailing your numbers,
Yeah.
really focusing on your income and outgoing. That is one process. You're going to hate it. It will be painful the first few months, and that'll become part of your process. You have to know your numbers if you know where you're going and where you are now, and you've got to close that gap. We've talked about the mistakes with taking too much out in dividend in the early years, where your income may be unpredictable, or you're not sure of whether you can be capable of doing that. And then the other one that I see a lot with women is the fear of increasing their prices. So we know prices have gone up. We all know the cost of living has gone up. And it's a real barrier, particularly as you mentioned earlier, which is an area that I work quite a lot in, which is the salon and beauty industry as well, is having to raise those prices in line with the cost of what it's costing you to do your job. And even in financial services, there are elements that we might lose money on unless we rectify our figures. So asking to increase or telling to increase, they're two different things, of course. Telling someone their price is going up and asking if you can are two very different psychological approaches. But whenever you get that kind of barrier of charging your worth, I always say to clients, if you increase your prices by 10%, are you going to lose 10% of your clients? And their answer is inevitably no. I might lose 2%, not going to lose 10. Well, then it's worth doing then, isn't it? You're 8% up. So you shouldn't be fearful to increase your prices. Everyone else is, and it's an expectation of inflation and cost of living. And we all know the pressures with business rates at the moment, and it being in the news with the cost of having a bricks and mortar business in particular. So feeling that you deserve to charge your worth, again, that's a mindset shift, but you can do it in a way that is polite and assertive, but actually you're doing it in a way that says this is happening, you can choose to accept it or not, but knowing that actually the majority of people are not going to walk out the door because you've increased your prices by a few percentage points.
No. Yeah, absolutely. And what about sort of leading on from this? What about people that potentially might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed with, again, finances? Because we talked about sort of the common mistakes, but what if someone's sort of listening to this and thinking, wow, this is a great episode, but actually I'm now feeling a little bit overwhelmed. What would you say is their sort of first starting point, first steps that they could do to kind of address any overwhelm that they've got around finances?
I think the most important thing to try and get curious about yourself is why you place so much emotion on money. And that story is different for everybody, dependent on the experience they've had growing up. And we talk about this in coaching a lot with the concept of imprinting. The way that your brains are formed, the way that your habits are formed, the way that your borrowed beliefs are formed are all done before the age of 7 with things you see, you hear, people tell you and talk around you, and the influences that you have. You don't even know it's happening. And that can have a huge positive and negative impact on the way that you then respond to money when you're an adult and how you behave with money. But a lot of what we do now is triggered by the emotion of money. If you take emotion out of money, it's a lot easier to give every pound a purpose and align it with what your goals are. I mean, what is it? It's a conduit to live life on your own terms. It's an exchange of value. You know, it is just a way of converting something you want, or something you want with something that you already have. It's a transaction. So placing so much emotion, and I know it's difficult, you know, if you've got money that has come from divorce maybe, or you've got money that has been inherited where you think, oh, I don't want to invest it, it doesn't feel like it's mine, and I have to do it with such purpose because this person, you know, passed away and left it to me. I've got such, you know, overwhelm in using it as a force for good, and inevitably then you don't do anything with it because you're too scared. I get that there's a lot of emotion with money, but the quicker you remove that emotion, the easier it is to deploy it to things that you absolutely want to do, your goals, aligning them with your values, aligning it with your exit planning for retirement, or to leave, to close or sell your business. That would be sort of my main area. And you know, in terms of being overwhelmed, do not think that you need to do it on your own. You wouldn't try and write a contract for your conveyancing on your own. You go to a solicitor. You wouldn't probably try and do your accounts on your own. You go to an accountant. So if you are struggling with what to do with money or how to manage your cash flow, go to an advisor. And we offer a free 30-minute call for anybody to sort of brain dump. These are my problems, these are my pain points, where should I go next? And sometimes it's a case of, yep, you need a good accountant or you need a good tax advisor, but sometimes you need some coaching or a helping hand, or you need a plan, or you just need some life cover to take that heat out of, I'm really worried about what happens if something happens. So yeah, they would be my 2 points for people getting overwhelmed.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those. And then final question that I've got for you, which is all about sort of, again, looking towards the future. Our listeners, I'm sure, are all looking towards the future when it comes to kind of legacy building, wealth building, building that long-term financial, you know, freedom and well-being and all of those elements to it. How would you say that our listeners, our female entrepreneurs listening to this episode, can start thinking beyond the business income that's there and towards that wealth, that legacy, that long-term financial gain?
Yeah, so this is probably quite an overwhelming exercise. So you'd probably need some quiet space to sit down, nice cup of tea, no distractions. But you have to, when you're setting up a business, you have to work from the end backwards. So you have to know, number one, what are you creating it for? And there's, you know, whole reams of things we could talk about as to aligning those with your values and your goals, etc. But ultimately, when is it going to end? What do you want it to buy you at the end? And when do you want to stop this train?
Yes.
Because only when you know that, you then need to think about what is your financial freedom number. You know, what lump sum do you want out of this project that we're, you know, you're starting on this journey. What do you want out of it? Because if you don't know where you want to be at what date, you can't then extrapolate backwards and retrofit and go, okay, so I want to sell this for 2 million quid at age 60. So that gives me 20 years. So what does that look like in terms of per year growth? So what does that look like in terms of per month growth? So what does that mean in terms of net profit per week? So you're breaking it down into manageable targets that you can get laser focused on a week by week or a month by month or quarter by quarter to keep yourself on track, and then regularly reviewing what that financial freedom number is. And if that number means actually that means I've got to scale up quicker, or I've got to create other sources of income to get to this number, at least now you know. You know, you've got that kind of you've got the ability to make informed decisions of, right, so I need to have diversify my streams of income. So I need to look at ISAs, I need to look at pensions, property portfolios, I want to look at other investments. I want to bring my children into the business. You know, I want to create a digital product? All of these kind of other areas you can work on if you know what your end game is. The other thing you need to think about is the capability of what that looks like. So again, in the salon industry, the two options are retain it as a passive income, but put someone else in there to do your job, or sell it. And you need to know in your industry what things are selling for. Is it multiple of income? Is it multiple of EBITDA? Is it different because you're a franchise and therefore you look at individual options? How does that look? And again, okay, so that means that that number needs to reflect that amount of income or that turnover for the business at the point of sale. So where I am now and where I've got to get to, how much growth have I got to create per month, per year, etc. So I would break it down incrementally and then retrofit what you're doing now to make sure that you're on track.
I love that. Reverse engineering. And it's very similar to what I do with all my clients actually on a yearly basis, but normally from the sales perspective and, you know, and sort of business growth. But absolutely, I suppose that could be applied to any area of business as well, can't it? And this being looking at that very bigger picture, like you said, if you're looking to sell your company for X amount in 10 years time, or if you're wanting to hit X amount in 5 years, whatever it is, just completely reverse engineer it back and break it down. And I think that is such valued advice that I'm sure many people aren't doing when they look at the finances. It's so easy to do it year on year, isn't it? And say, I want to hit 6 figures or 7 figures this year, and we're going to work that backwards. But actually, are people looking at that bigger picture, especially with finances? Because I think I think so many of us, and myself included, in the past for sure, we miss out on opportunities when it comes to reinvesting and pensions and other things that we've spoken about today. There's an opportunity, and I think we absolutely need to maximize that, especially if you are a business based in the UK, which I know a number of our listeners are. There's with the amount of tax and all sorts that we have to pay here. Huge, right? Absolutely huge. Fliss, do you know what? This has been such a fantastic conversation. Before we go, what is your final piece of advice for our listeners today?
Ooh, that's a big one. I would say the best thing you can do is take a cold, unemotional look at your numbers in your business, income, expenditure, surplus income. Look at what you've already built in your buckets. So what have you got in your yesterday bucket, your today bucket, your tomorrow bucket? And don't feel that you have to work through all of your emotion with money, or your invest on your own. There are people out there like myself, like accountants, tax advisors, coaches, etc., that can support you on that journey. So do not be scared to ask questions that will make a massive difference to your overall plans.
Amazing advice. Thank you so much for coming onto our podcast today and giving so much value. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you, Fliss?
Yep, so we've got 2 handles on Instagram, at Fliss Wallace Financial and at Seymour Financial. There is a website, Seymour Financial, on there where you can book a free call as well, and you can find all the details of our coaching and free guides and deliverables that may support your business in the bio on our Instagram profiles as well.
Amazing. And all of Fliss's links are in the show notes. So scroll down and go and connect with her, go and say hello. And I highly recommend her. She's absolutely incredible at what she does. Fliss, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in to today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. And I'll see you all again next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast with me, your host, Kaylee Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow and scale your dream 6-figure or multi-6-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.